Looking now at Titus chapter 3, verse 9, continuing right where we left off, we first see a de, which sets us up for a little bit of a contrast here. So I'll read it first in the Greek and then read it through the NASB. Moras de zeteses kai genealogias kai eres kai makas namikas peristaso. There's that umlaut gives us a double iota sound. Asin gar anopheles kai, and then one other word on this next page, mataioi. Reading it in the New American Standard. But, I'll underline as I go. But, and all the way down here we have avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and strife and disputes about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. Relatively straightforward grammatically. There's certainly some words in here that would be unfamiliar, but the first thing to see is that in English we end up putting avoid up front here, but our main verb comes quite a bit later. And this is setting up a bit of a contrast. Again, the typical is going to be that the verb shows up first, but all of what precedes it is he's just talked about, quote unquote, these things in verse 8. He was talking about these things being the gospel message in verses 4 through 7. But in verse 9, now he pivots to talking about but this and this and this and this. What? You're telling me all these things, but what am I supposed to do with all of these things? And previously, the instructions that Paul gave is this: I want you to insist on something. So in contrast to insist, but rather than insisting, I want you to avoid. Really the opposite of insisting and being intent on and focusing on, directing attention towards. I want you to actually steer clear of this. Specifically, what's being steered clear of is foolish controversies, and then those genealogies, just an endless speculation about, well, could it be this, could it be that? Strife in general, just not desiring conflict, certainly not conflict with believers. And then avoiding makos nomikos, disputes about the law, just getting sucked into arguments related to what aspects of this law do non-Jews need to follow, and all of these things that can end up just distracting from what is the message of our salvation, because Titus is to avoid these things. And then the reason given, this causal adverbial conjunction, for what's going on here, why, explain this. For they are, this is third person plural, asin, they are, or these things are. So in reference to thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, thing 4, all of those things are the subject, kind of the implied subject of asin here. For these things are anopheles, and this is the exact opposite of the word used previously in verse 8 that talks about how insistence on the gospel message is actually useful. But here, these arguments about the law and speculations and endless genealogies, these things are the opposite of useful. These are useless. And this other word, mataioi, if you look that up, you can see this is the idea of emptiness, futility, worthlessness, uselessness. This is something you do not want to be investing your time in, Titus. Titus, there are a lot of things you can focus on in Crete. There's a lot of things that need work. There's a lot of things that need attention. But this is one of those areas that if you start going down this road, you might not come back, because it will consume so much time on these things that are actually not useful. They're not beneficial for people. They're empty. And he's therefore instructed to avoid these things entirely. Steer clear of these situations. And then what follows is going to be some specific instructions for how to handle someone that just continues to insist on these things to the point of eres and strife, and causing contention, and being one that's unwilling to yield to perhaps the elders in this local town, or even just Titus's authority directly as he's speaking on behalf of Paul. So that is Titus chapter 3, verse 9, giving the opposite of the things that Titus is supposed to proclaim and continue to exhort because it's a sound saying or a trustworthy saying. Verse 9 is giving the contrast of what is not worth attention. So hopefully that was helpful.